My name is Rachel, and I was 26 when my parents stood up in front of our entire family and called me selfish. It was supposed to be a normal evening, a family dinner, laughter around the table, stories shared, but instead, it turned into the kind of public humiliation you never forget. I remember the way my father cleared his throat, the way my mother's lips curved into that thin smile she always wore when she thought she was about to teach me a lesson, and then, in front of my aunts, uncles, cousins, people I had grown up with, they said it. Rachel only thinks about herself. She refuses to put the family first. She's selfish. The words echoed, heavy and sharp, and I felt every pair of eyes at that table turn to me. Some shook their heads. Some whispered under their breath. I saw my younger brother smirk, leaning back in his chair like he'd won a victory just by watching me shrink. I wanted to defend myself, to scream that I wasn't selfish, that I was just protecting what little was mine, but my father cut me off before I could even open my mouth. "Don't bother arguing," he said. "Everyone knows you only care about yourself. That's why you don't deserve a say in this." I sat there, stunned, humiliated, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The whispers around me blurred into noise. For a moment, I almost believed them. Maybe I really was selfish. Maybe I really was the problem. But what none of them knew was that the decision had already been made and the papers were already signed. And when they saw whose signature was on them, the room would never be the same. Being called selfish wasn't new to me. In fact, it had been the soundtrack of my life for as long as I could remember. It was the label my parents clung to, the weapon they used whenever I dared to ask for something, or worse, when I dared to say no. My younger brother, Daniel, was the golden child. He could do no wrong. When he wanted something, my parents called it ambition. When I wanted something, it was selfishness. That word followed me everywhere, from childhood birthdays to adult conversations. I remember when I was 9 years old, I asked if I could have my own birthday party instead of sharing with Daniel. My mom laughed like I'd told a joke. "Rachel, don't be selfish. It's easier if we combine them." So that year and every year after, the cake was decorated with his favorite theme. The gifts leaned in his direction, and I learned how to blow out candles no one bothered to relight for me. In high school, I worked hard, pulling late nights to make grades that could earn me a scholarship. When I finally won an academic award, I begged my parents to come to the ceremony. They promised they would, but halfway through, I scanned the crowd and saw empty chairs where they should have been. Later, I learned they had left early to watch Daniel's basketball game. At dinner that night, my dad said, "Don't be selfish, Rachel. You should be proud of your brother. His game was more important." The word cut deeper every time. When I got my first part-time job and decided to save, instead of handing my paycheck over for family expenses, I was selfish. When I wanted to spend Christmas with a friend's family, because I was tired of being ignored at my own table, I was selfish. Even when I tried to stand up for myself, asking them to stop comparing me to Daniel, the response was the same. "Why are you so selfish, Rachel? Can't you just be happy for him?" It was exhausting, carrying that label like a scarlet letter. No matter what I did, I was wrong. No matter how much I gave, it was never enough. If I spoke up, I was selfish. If I stayed quiet, I was invisible. The truth is, Daniel had been handed everything. Opportunities, support, praise, and I was expected to give. Give my time, give my money, give my silence. Whenever he stumbled, I was told to sacrifice. When I stumbled, I was told to stop being dramatic. The worst sting came when my grandmother passed away. She had been the only one who saw me differently, who whispered late at night, "You're not selfish, Rachel. You're strong for holding on when they push you down." In her will, she left behind a small property, split equally between me and Daniel. For the first time, something was mine legally, undeniably mine. But even then, my parents twisted it. They told me it was only fair to let Daniel handle it. "Don't be selfish, Rachel," my mother said, as she pushed documents across the table. "He knows how to manage things better than you." My father chimed in, "You're not cut out for responsibility. Just sign it over." I refused, and that's when their anger sharpened into something more public. They began to shame me, not just in private, but in front of others. At dinners, family gatherings, even casual conversations, they framed me as the ungrateful daughter who refused to put family first. Relatives whispered, nodding along, convinced I was hoarding something that didn't belong to me. Daniel basked in their sympathy, painting me as greedy while he smiled his practiced smile. That's why, when my father stood up at that dinner table and called me selfish, no one batted an eye. They'd heard it before. To them, it was the truth. To them, I was the problem. But what they didn't realize was that their favorite weapon, the word selfish, had finally lost its power. I was tired of carrying it, tired of letting it define me. And while they thought they were cornering me into submission, something else was happening behind the scenes. Because the papers they wanted me to sign, they weren't waiting for me. They had already been signed. And the name at the bottom wasn't Daniel's. It wasn't even mine. And when my parents saw whose signature it was, everything they thought they knew about power, control, and selfishness, it would come crashing down. I thought the label selfish was just words, but I was wrong. It became their excuse to take action to try and strip me of everything that was legally mine. The fight began over my grandmother's property. The will had been clear. It was to be split equally between me and Daniel, half mine, half his. But from the moment those papers were read, my parents acted like my share was a mistake, like Grandma had only written my name out of pity. One evening, they called me into the living room. Daniel was already there, lounging on the couch with his usual smug grin, papers spread out on the coffee table. My father didn't waste time. "Rachel, it's time to do the right thing. Sign these over to Daniel." I stared at the documents. Legal transfer papers? They had already filled out everything except my signature. My mother folded her arms. "This isn't about taking from you. It's about fairness. Daniel can handle the responsibility. You can't. Don't be selfish." The word stung, just like it always had. I took a deep breath. Grandma wanted me to have my share. It's not selfish to keep what's mine. Daniel let out a sharp laugh. "Come on, Rachel. You don't even know how to manage money. You'll just waste it. Do you want everyone to see how incapable you are? Just sign and save yourself the embarrassment." I felt my fists clench, my heart pounding. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not signing." The air in the room shifted. My father's jaw tightened, his voice rising. "You're embarrassing this family. You've always been selfish, and now you're proving it. Do you want us to tell everyone the truth? Do you want them to see how ungrateful you are?" My mother's tone turned icy. "We'll call a meeting. The relatives deserve to know how you're tearing this family apart over money. Let's see how you explain your selfishness to them." Daniel leaned forward, smirking. "Good idea. We'll do it in front of everyone. Then you'll cave. You always do." My chest tightened, but I held my ground. "I won't cave this time." He smirked wider. "We'll see." And that's how it began. My parents weren't content to pressure me in private anymore. They wanted an audience. They wanted to humiliate me so thoroughly that I'd have no choice but to sign. So they called a family gathering. They told relatives it was about finalizing the estate, but I knew what it really was. An ambush. When the day came, I walked into the hall to find a crowd already seated. My parents at the front, Daniel beside them, the papers laid out like a trap waiting for me. Whispers followed me as I sat down. There she island, selfish Rachel. Always causing drama. My father stood, his voice booming. "We're here because Rachel refuses to do the right thing. She's holding the family back. She's clinging to something she doesn't deserve. And why? Because she's selfish." The word echoed through the room, sharp and familiar. My mother nodded in agreement, Daniel smirking as he slid the papers across the table toward me. "Sign them," my father ordered. "Prove you're not as selfish as everyone thinks." The room was silent, every eye on me, waiting for me to crumble. But this time, I didn't reach for the pen. I pushed the papers back across the table. My voice was steady, even as my heart pounded. "I won't sign. Not today. Not ever." Gasps filled the room. My mother sneered. My father slammed his fist on the table. Daniel leaned in, his voice low but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Then you'll regret it, Rachel. Because the next time we call you selfish, it won't just be in this room. It'll be in front of everyone you know." And in that moment, I realized they weren't going to stop until they broke me. What I didn't realize was that they were the ones about to be broken. I should have known the family meeting wasn't going to be fair. The second I stepped into the rented hall, I could feel the weight of every stare. My parents had invited not just close relatives, but cousins, aunts, uncles, even family friends. They wanted an audience. They wanted a spectacle. At the front of the room, Daniel sat with his arms folded, a grin tugging at his lips. The stack of papers was laid out on the table in front of him like bait in a trap. My parents flanked him, their expressions already victorious, as if they knew I'd fold the moment the pressure closed in. The whispers started the second I walked in. "There's Rachel. She's the one holding everything up. Always been selfish." I forced myself to sit, my palms sweaty, my chest tight. My father was the first to speak. His voice boomed through the hall. "We are here because Rachel refuses to do what's right. She refuses to put family before herself. She refuses to stop being selfish." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother chimed in, her tone syrupy sweet. "We've given her every chance, but she just won't listen. She'd rather drag us all down than share." Daniel leaned forward, picking up the pen and waving it like a trophy. "So here's your chance, Rachel. Prove us wrong. Sign the papers. Show everyone you're not the selfish brat they think you are." Laughter trickled through the relatives seated nearby. I could feel my face burning, every eye waiting for me to cave. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, my father cut in. "You don't need to explain. Just sign. End this." The humiliation pressed down like a weight. Every instinct told me to flee, to disappear. But I stayed seated, my voice shaking as I managed, "I won't sign. Grandma left that property to me too. I'm not giving it away." Gasps echoed. My mother's smile vanished, replaced with a sneer. Listen to her. Still selfish. Still ungrateful. She thinks she knows better than her own. Parents... Daniel stood, slamming the papers down in front of me so hard, the pen rolled across the table. "Sign it, Rachel. Stop pretending you're equal. We all know you can't handle responsibility. You never could." The words cut deep, sharp, and familiar. I could hear whispers around the room, voices rising. She really is stubborn. Why won't she just do the right thing? Daniel deserves it more. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to meet his eyes. "I'm not signing. Not now. Not ever." The crowd erupted, voices clashing. Some laughed, some shook their heads, some muttered insults under their breath. My father slammed his fist on the table. "You're humiliating yourself, Rachel. Do you want everyone to see what kind of daughter you really are?" Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I stood, my voice trembling but audible. "I'm not selfish for keeping what's mine. You're selfish for trying to steal it." The room went still for a moment, long enough for me to hear the faint sound of a phone buzzing. My eyes flicked to the side and caught it. A cousin near the back, holding his phone high, the red light blinking. Recording. Maybe even streaming. My mother noticed too. Instead of panic, she smiled coldly. "Good," she said loudly. "Let them record. Let the whole world see what a selfish girl you are. Maybe then she'll finally feel the shame she deserves." The laughter grew again, sharp and cruel. Daniel shoved the pen toward me one more time, his voice low but clear enough for the crowd. "Sign it, Rachel, or live with everyone knowing you're nothing but selfish and weak." I looked at the blinking red dot, then at the faces around me waiting for me to break, to crumble like I always had before. My chest was tight, my hands shook, but something inside me refused to bend. I straightened my shoulders, pushed the papers back across the table, and said with all the strength I could, "Gather, no." The hall exploded in murmurs, half shocked, half mocking. My father's face twisted with rage. My mother shook her head in disgust, and Daniel's smirk faltered for the first time. And then, the doors at the back of the hall creaked open. Every head turned. And when I saw who walked in, I realized the game had just changed. The doors at the back of the hall creaked open, but no one paid much attention at first. Every eye was still glued to me, waiting for me to finally break. Daniel loomed over the table, his hand gripping the pen like it was a weapon. My father's face was red with fury, my mother's lips curled in disgust. "Rachel," my father barked, "sign the papers. This nonsense has gone on long enough. Do you want to embarrass yourself even more?" My mother's voice followed, sharp and cutting. "Stop dragging this family through the mud. You've always been selfish, and now everyone sees it. Prove us wrong for once in your life." The whispers in the crowd swelled like a wave crashing over me. She really is stubborn. Why won't she just think of the family? Daniel deserves it more. I felt the heat crawl up my neck, my hands trembling at my sides. And then Daniel leaned closer, his voice low but cruel enough for everyone to hear. "You're pathetic, Rachel. You'll always be selfish. And when you walk out of here, that's all anyone will remember about you." He shoved the pen toward me again. I didn't touch it. Instead, I looked past him, toward the corner of the room where I'd seen that blinking red light. My cousin still had his phone up, the faint red dot glowing. It wasn't just recording anymore, I heard someone whisper. It's live. A murmur rippled through the hall. She's streaming it. Oh my God, people are already watching. Everyone's seeing this right now. Daniel noticed too. He froze for half a second, then laughed bitterly to cover it. Good, let them watch. Let them see how selfish you are. Let them see you humiliate yourself. But the crowd's energy shifted. No one was laughing now. Their eyes flicked between me and the blinking phone, uncertainty creeping into their faces. I swallowed hard, my chest heaving. For once, I didn't feel like running. For once, the truth was finally out of my hands. I stood a little taller, meeting Daniel's glare. My voice shook at first, but then steadied. You think this is about selfishness? No. This is about greed. You're the one stealing from me, and now the world is watching you do it. Gasps rippled through the room. My mother's smile faltered. My father's jaw tightened. Daniel's smirk cracked. You'll regret saying that, my father hissed. We're your parents. You don't talk to us like that. I forced myself not to look away. Parents protect their children. They don't rob them, and if that makes me selfish for standing up for myself, then maybe selfish isn't such a bad thing after all. The whispers grew louder. I heard someone mutter, "She has a point." Another voice added, "It doesn't look good on them." Daniel's face flushed red. He slammed the pen back onto the table. You'll pay for this, Rachel. You'll lose everything. You're too weak to fight us. His words echoed, sharp and cruel, the same tone I had lived under my entire life. But this time, they didn't break me. I looked straight at him and said clearly, "No, I'm stronger than you think, and you're about to find out." The hall went dead silent. And then, from the back of the room, a voice cut through the tension. Calm, commanding, impossible to ignore. Actually, the voice said, she's right. Every head turned. And when I saw who was standing there, briefcase in hand, eyes fixed on my parents, I knew everything was about to change. Actually, the voice repeated, steady and sharp enough to cut through the chaos, she's right. Every head in the hall turned at once. The crowd parted as a man in a charcoal suit strode forward, briefcase in hand. My heart lurched when I recognized him. Mr. Jennings, my grandmother's longtime attorney. He had been quiet since her passing, handling estate details behind the scenes. I never expected him to show up here, in this hall, at this exact moment. My parents froze. Daniel's smirk vanished. For the first time all night, they looked nervous. Mr. Jennings stopped at the table, placed his briefcase down, and spoke in a calm, deliberate tone. I've been monitoring the handling of this estate very carefully, and what I've seen tonight, captured on that live stream, is troubling coercion, intimidation, and public humiliation, all directed at Rachel. Gasps swept through the room. My father's face turned crimson. This is a family matter. You don't belong here. Mr. Jennings opened his briefcase, producing a neat stack of documents. He laid them out on the table with a precision that made the room fall silent. Actually, I do. Your mother Rachel's grandmother anticipated that this exact scenario might occur. She left instructions in her will, and those instructions have already been carried out. My mother leaned forward, her voice strained. What are you talking about? Mr. Jennings looked straight at me. Rachel, your grandmother knew you would be pressured to give up your share. That's why she took steps to protect you. The property transfer papers your parents have been waving around are meaningless because the real papers were already signed, and the signature on them wasn't yours. My breath caught. What do you mean? He held up a notarized document for everyone to see. Your grandmother signed them herself before she passed. She arranged it so that Rachel's portion of the estate would not just be protected, but fully transferred into her name, independent of her. Parents' interference. Legally, Rachel owns the property outright. Daniel has no claim. The hall erupted in murmurs, shock rippling like electricity. No, Daniel snapped, standing abruptly. That's not possible. She said it was supposed to be split. She said Mr. Jennings cut him off smoothly. She said it would be split, yes, but she also knew how often Rachel was called selfish. She knew how easily her voice would be drowned out. So she included a clause that activated if there was any evidence of coercion. And thanks to that live stream, that clause is now active, which means Rachel doesn't just own her half. She owns it all. The crowd gasped louder this time. Whispers filled the air. She owns everything? So all this time, they tried to trick her, but it backfired. My father's face twisted in fury. This is ridiculous. You can't just I can, Mr. Jennings interrupted firmly, because these documents were signed and notarized by your own mother. Her word carries more weight than yours. And Rachel's rights are fully protected under the law. My mother's voice cracked. This isn't fair. She's selfish she doesn't deserve. Mr. Jennings raised a hand. Selfish? No. Protecting what's yours is not selfish. Trying to steal it from your own daughter, that's selfish. The words echoed through the hall like a gavel slamming down. For once, the whispers weren't about me. They were about them, about my parents, about Daniel. I sat frozen, my chest tight, my eyes stinging. The humiliation I had carried for years was unraveling right there, in front of everyone. They weren't winning anymore. They were being exposed. Mr. Jennings turned back to me, his expression softening. Rachel, your grandmother wanted you to have security. She trusted you to carry her legacy. You don't need to sign anything. It's already yours. Daniel's fists clenched, his voice breaking. This isn't over. She can't just take everything. But Mr. Jennings didn't even look at him. He packed his briefcase with calm precision, then looked out at the crowd. You've all seen the truth tonight. The live stream will ensure it's undeniable. The estate is settled. Rachel is the rightful owner. This discussion is closed. The room buzzed with disbelief. Some relatives applauding softly, others shaking their heads in shame. My parents sat in stunned silence, their faces pale, their victory shattered. And me? For the first time in my life, I didn't feel selfish. I felt strong. The tables had finally turned. The hall broke apart in chaos after Mr. Jennings's announcement, but I hardly heard it. I sat frozen in my chair, staring at the papers he'd left in front of me, my grandmother's signature written in neat, steady ink. For years, my parents had told me I was selfish, incapable, weak, and now, in front of everyone, the truth had undone them. My father stormed out first, his face red with rage, muttering threats under his breath. My mother followed quickly after, her eyes darting away from the whispers and stares. Daniel lingered, like he couldn't quite believe the room had turned against him, but when no one stepped up to defend him, he too left, slamming the door behind him. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Their downfall was only beginning. By the next morning, the live stream had spread beyond our family circle. People had shared it on social media, clipped the worst parts, my father barking at me to sign, my mother sneering that I was selfish, Daniel calling me pathetic. And then the moment Jennings revealed the truth, that the papers had already been signed by my grandmother, that everything was mine, the comments poured in. She's not selfish, she's brave. Imagine calling your daughter selfish while you're the ones trying to rob her. Props to Grandma for protecting her. For the first time, the narrative wasn't controlled by them. It was controlled by the truth. Daniel's collapse came first. For years, he had been the golden child, praised by relatives, teachers, and neighbors. He had cultivated this image of charm and confidence, but the live stream shattered it in minutes. People stopped seeing him as ambitious. They saw him as entitled, spoiled, cruel. The whispers followed him everywhere. At his college, classmates replayed clips of him sneering at me. Professors who once bent rules for him grew distant. Even his friends, the same ones who used to join in mocking me, started pulling away. He tried to laugh it off online, posting that family drama shouldn't be taken so seriously. But the comments turned vicious. Family drama? You tried to steal your sister's inheritance. Golden Boy looks a lot less shiny now. This is what entitlement looks like. The sponsors he had been chasing for an internship dropped him within a week. The basketball team he loved quietly benched him after the video made rounds in the local community. His reputation, the thing he had lived off of for so long, crumbled like sand slipping through his fingers. My father's fall was harsher. He had always built his identity around being a man of integrity. In church, in business, in the neighborhood, he presented himself as someone who put family first. But the live stream showed a different picture, a father pressuring his daughter to sign away her rights, threatening her in public, exposing his greed for everyone to see. The impact on his business was immediate. Longtime partners pulled out of deals. One client emailed him directly, "If you'd exploit your own child, what's stopping you from exploiting us?" His contracts dried up, his calendar emptied. The man who once strutted around like a pillar of the community now avoided eye contact in grocery store aisles, aware of the whispers following him. My mother's unraveling was quieter, but just as devastating. Her social standing had always been her lifeline: the charity events, the women's circles, the gossip sessions where she could brag about Daniel and brush me aside. But now, when she walked into those rooms, conversations stopped. People stared. Some even confronted her directly. How could you treat your daughter that way? You called her selfish while you were stealing from her? Her friends stopped inviting her out. The church group she adored asked her to step back for a while. At first, she fought it, insisting it was all exaggerated, but the live stream didn't lie. And without admiration, without her stage, she withered. Meanwhile, I was learning what it felt like to breathe freely for the first time. The house my grandmother's house was mine, officially and legally. I remember walking through the front door after Jennings finalized the transfer. I ran my hand along the banister, feeling the grooves where my grandmother's hand once rested. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an intruder in my own story. I felt like I belonged. The rooms were quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that felt like peace, not neglect. I set up my own space, hung my own pictures, cooked meals without the tension of someone waiting to call me dramatic or selfish. I filled the house with laughter from friends who came to visit, with books and music I chose myself, with warmth that had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with belonging. My career began to shift too. The livestream had made me visible in ways I didn't expect. People reached out, colleagues who said they admired how I had stood my ground, mentors who wanted to support me, even strangers who told me, "You gave me the courage to stand up to my own family." For once, I wasn't the selfish daughter in the shadows. I was Rachel, the woman who didn't sign, who didn't cave, who proved she was stronger than everyone believed. And here's the truth. It wasn't the inheritance that mattered most. It wasn't even the vindication of watching my parents squirm as their reputations collapsed. What mattered was that I no longer needed their approval. Their voices, once so loud in my head, were reduced to background noise. Sometimes I still hear them, my father's thunder, my mother's sneer, Daniel's mocking laugh. But when I hear those echoes now, I don't feel weak. I feel steady, because I outlasted them. Because the truth won. Because I know now that protecting yourself doesn't make you selfish, it makes you strong. My parents thought they were staging my humiliation. Instead, they staged their own downfall. And me? I walked out of that hall with nothing but my dignity, and it turned out dignity was worth more than everything they tried to take. When I stand in my grandmother's house now, sunlight spilling across the wooden floors, I think about how different my life feels. For years, that word selfish chased me like a shadow. It was thrown at me when I asked for the smallest kindness. It was used to silence me when I tried to stand my ground. It was their weapon, their excuse, their favorite way to shrink me. But now, when I hear it, it doesn't sting. It almost makes me smile, because I've learned something they never wanted me to know. Selfish isn't protecting what's yours. Selfish is trying to take from the people you should be protecting. I won't lie, the scars are still there. I still remember sitting at that table, every eye on me, waiting for me to cave. I remember Daniel's smirk, my mother's sneer, my father's fist slamming the table. I remember feeling so small, so certain that maybe they were right about me. Those memories don't disappear, but they've transformed. They're not wounds anymore. They're reminders, proof that I stood even when every voice in the room told me to bow. And the truth is, I didn't need to win to feel free. I didn't need to humiliate them or prove them wrong in front of the world. What freed me was realizing that I could live without their approval, that their voices didn't define me, that I had a right to my own peace, even if it made me look selfish in their eyes. Peace is non-negotiable. Respect is non-negotiable. And once you learn that, no one can take it from you. My grandmother understood that. Maybe that's why she signed those papers. Maybe that's why she protected me even when she wasn't here anymore, because she knew I'd be tested and she wanted me to survive it. She gave me more than a house. She gave me proof that I wasn't invisible, proof that someone believed in me all along. And that's what I carry now. Not bitterness, not anger, just strength. The kind of strength that whispers, you're allowed to keep what's yours. You're allowed to choose yourself. So when I look back at that night, when they called me selfish in front of everyone, I no longer feel humiliation. I feel clarity. Because sometimes the names people use to tear you down reveal more about them than about you. My parents called me selfish, but in the end, they were the ones who showed the world their greed. And I was the one who walked away with dignity intact. So let me ask you, if your family stood in front of a crowd and called you selfish for protecting your future, would you hand it over just to make them proud? Or would you stand tall until the truth signed its own name?